Bismillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sallam. In the name of Allah, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon His final messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, his companions and all those who follow him until the day of judgment. The hadith that we're going to cover today, inshallah ta'ala, hadith الثامن عن ابن عمر رضي الله تعالى عنهما. وقال المؤلف رحمه الله. We say when we read a hadith, وقال المؤلف رحمه الله, right? Or Shaykhi, that he said all the way to the Sahabas, but we say like that out of adab, because we didn't hear it directly from Abdullah ibn Umar, right? So therefore we say, who compiled this book? Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah. So we say, وقال المؤلف رحمه الله عن ابن عمر رضي الله تعالى عنهما أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال أمرت أن أقاتل الناس حتى يشهدوا أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمدا رسول الله ويقيموا الصلاة ويؤتوا الزكاة فإذا فعلوا ذلك عصموا مني دماءهم وأموالهم إلا بحق الإسلام وحسابهم على الله تعالى. رواه al-Bukhari wa Muslim. The hadith in English, it was related on the authority of Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and may Allah be pleased with both of them, him and his father, that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, I have been commanded to fight the people until they say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, and until they establish prayer, pay zakat. Then if they do that, they are safe from me with respect to their blood and their property, except for the rights of Islam. And their reckoning is with Allah. Allah, exalted is He. Related by Bukhari and Muslim. Now this hadith, the Islamophobes, those that don't like Islam, they take this hadith. The Mutashaddideen, the extremists, also take this hadith. And first of all, and some sincere brothers and sisters, they look at this hadith, and because it's an authentic hadith, they begin to reject the hadith completely. They say this goes like في تعارض بين معنى الحديث والقرآن. Right? So they say there's a contradiction. Right? Why? Because in the Quran it says لا إكراه في الدين. There's no compulsion in religion. Right? The Quran says لَكُمْ وَلِيَ to you your religion to me. What does it say? That I've been commanded to fight people until they say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Now first of all, when you look at a hadith, you look at there is sabab al-wurud al-hadith. What's the story behind the hadith? There is an analysis of the sanad of the hadith, the chain of the hadith, and the grade of the hadith, darajatul hadith, right? And also if there's ilal in the hadith, if there is a deficiency in the hadith. So you analyze all of this. Scholars did this for us, and they gave us what they arrived at. So first thing is in the meaning an-nas in Arabic, in the Quran and in the hadith, there is some, and in usul al-fiqh there's something called am and khas. Here it seems general. I've been commanded to fight the people, and uqatil also means kill, right? It also can be many meanings. But here it says an-nas. So an-nas here, some people that don't have in-depth studies, they would just take from the surface and said it means fight all the people in general, right? Now, the word nas is also means specific in the Quran. For example, who is mukallif to make hajj? Man. الناس جميعا من المسلم صح جيد في القرآن in the Quran it says أذن في الناس بالحج أذن في الناس بالحج. Invite the people to make Hajj, men and Muslimun. Because the non-Muslim is not mukallaf until he enters Islam. So you see, Allah uses a general term, but He means khas, specific. So the hadith also is in that nature. It has a general statement. Now, there is 3 types of people. Like in Surah Al-Baqarah, we have al-mu'minun, wal-kafirun, the disbelievers, wal-munafiqun, and the hypocrites. Now we analyze one by one. The believers, can we fight the believers? Definitely, there is istisna, there is exception. When? There is exception. So what's the story? In the time of Abu Bakr, as-Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala anhu, 3 groups of these 3 categories arose. One of them said, they were believers, and they said, we're not going to pay zakat after the Prophet died, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The second group is the hypocrites that says, now that the Prophet died, khalas, we don't need to be with this group, the hypocrites. And the third, the disbelievers that were following a false prophet, Musaylim al-Kadhab and others. So these 3 groups, they gathered together to fight the Muslims and the believers in Medina. Jade. So now Abu Bakr as-Siddiq was going to fight them. Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu said, are you going to fight someone who says La ilaha illallah? Are you going to fight someone that says La ilaha illallah? So Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala anhu said they refused to pay zakat, and zakat is a loan, is something that is an obligation towards Allah, and it is also a right on the man, on the wealth, because the zakat purifies the wealth, and also the zakat is a haqq of the thamaniya asnaf, the 8 categories in the ayah in the Quran. The poor, the orphans, right? Those in debt. These are the they're mustahaqeen. They deserve that zakat. So Abu Bakr said, if you're not going to pay zakat, and this is of course implemented within a Muslim land where there is implementation of Islam, based on the understanding of the scholars, etc., etc. So they fought in that battle. It's called the Battle of Ridda. In that battle, 70 Huffaz died, were shuhada. And because of that battle, Umar ibn Khattab suggested to Abu Bakr, Ya Abu Bakr, let's compile the Quran. And Abu Bakr said, no, the Prophet didn't tell us to do it. Right? And then Abu Bakr said, and then Umar said, yes, the Prophet has scribed Zayd ibn Thabit, right, and others. So that's the story of the beginning of compilation of the Quran. So here, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Abu Bakr as-Siddiq responded to Umar when he said, are you going to fight people that say La ilaha illallah? And the Prophet and Abu Bakr said, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam قال أمرت أن أقاتل الناس. Right? I was commanded to fight the people until they say La ilaha illallah, establish salah, and pay zakat. He didn't mention Sawm. He mentioned Talata min Arkan al-Khams. Jade? Limada? Because if a person breaks his fast, there is another type of punishment within the governance of Islam. But if a person doesn't make Hajj, he has time until he dies. Right? So that's the difference. He has time to make tawbah, to return. Right? He has time. But Salah and Zakah, the Salah is the pillar of the deen, is the backbone for us. And Zakah is the right of the people. So this is based on the believers faqat, right? How there was an incident where they fought the believers if they rebel, right? And they refuse what's obligatory. Why? Because in the deen, there's no separation between the ruling and spirituality. That's in Islam. So here, the non-believers, now what about the non-believers? So the believers, you don't fight them, right? And we don't have a right to take the law in our own hands. That's a different story. We don't have a right to take the law in our own hands, right? So if there has to be a government, and there has to be shura, etc., etc. Also, the non-believers. Can we fight the non-believers? Offensive? No. Right? Because there's no la ikraha fi din. Now, if they fight you and they strive to prevent physically, right? Strive to prevent you from sharing the message of Islam, then you have a right to defend yourself. But it's never an offensive approach. So if they strive and they fight you to prevent you from your peaceful approach to teach Islam, then you have a right to defend yourself. Now, what about a non-Muslim living in the Muslim land? They have rights as well. And there is something called jizya, right? Now I will give you a story in the Iberian Peninsula. In the Iberian Peninsula, في الأندلس, there was كانوا فيها الناس اسمه Visigoths. The Visigoths, they used to force people to accept their religion. They were Gothics, and they used to force people to pay a large amount of tax. And the people that lived there were the Gypsies, were Jews, were Christians. And this was like before the 700, قبل القرن الثامن, right? Before the 700. In the 711, that's when Tariq ibn Ziyad دخل الأندلس. جيد. كيف دخل? How did he enter? That الناس, the people, they realized that this group, the people, they didn't force the people to accept Islam. They understood that هؤلاء الذين يأتون من شمال أفريقيا المسلمون, they don't force people to accept Islam. SubhanAllah. So what they did, they opened the doors. They opened the doors and they welcomed them. And they joined forces. And they got rid of the Visigoths. Right? And they ruled for 782 years. 711 to 1492. Not only that, they paid the jizya, but their places of worship were preserved. They could be part of the government, and they thrived, and they enjoyed all the success that existed in the Iberian Peninsula. In the year 1138, there was a scholar. He's considered the top scholar within the Jewish community. If you look up the golden ages in Jewish history, is in Al-Andalus under Muslim rule. And this is found in the Judaic Encyclopedia. Okay? So in 1138, in the land of Cordoba was considered the jewel of the world at that time. It had 900 public baths that were like bathrooms with oil, nice oil, right? smelling all over, burning. And it was a hot, warm bath. And it was an artistic, they had the arcs and all that, mashallah. And it was available for any resident, anyone that passed by. And they had sidewalks, they had pavements, they had lights. When Europe was in dark ages, when Europe was in darkness, in those times. So in the year 1138, there was a man that was born, that is known as one of the top scholars in Jewish history. His name was Moses ben Maimun, right? Or Maimonides. Maimonides. So Moses ben Maimun was a rabbi, so he had religious education. He was an astronomer. He was a physician. And he was born in Cordoba. And there is a statue of him in Cordoba, and he has a turban, and he has a garment, and he's a Jewish scholar that was born in Al-Andalus. And then when Al-Andalus, right, then he moved to Egypt as well. So this is not the time to talk about his story, but this shows you how even non-Muslims under Muslim rule, they have rights. They can be forced to believe. They can be forced. Now the hypocrites, can we fight the hypocrites? Can we fight the hypocrites because of their hypocrisy? Because we think, now if they say, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, we have no right. Unless they fight you. Because they still say, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. And what does the hadith says at the end? Right? And their account is with Allah. And their account is with Allah. So now, we go back to the hadith, right? I have been commanded to fight the people. Right? I have been commanded to fight the people. Who? Those that fight you only. Not the believers who are fulfilling their duties. Not the hypocrites who say, La ilaha illallah Rasulullah, because if they're not fighting you. And even the non-believers, unless they fight you. It's only those that fight you. Okay? Now, looking at the hadith itself. This hadith, there is something called mutawatir. The hadith mutawatir is a hadith that in every chain, there are so many narrators that the scholars of hadith, the specialists say, it is impossible to fabricate this hadith, number one. And scholars of hadith, masters of hadith, don't even scrutinize the mutawatir hadith because it's considered of the highest caliber. Okay? This hadith was related by 17 sahabas. This hadith, just by one sahaba named Abu Huraira, 30 students of Abu Huraira related it from him. So, this hadith, by the scholars of hadith, they have a consensus of the level of authenticity that this hadith has. This is just from studying the narrators who related this hadith. So this hadith mutawatir means that so many narrators related it in one generation that it is impossible for it to be false, to be fabricated. And the mutawatir hadith are not many. But when there's a mutawatir hadith verified, and this is one of them. Right? There's another thing that we look at when we look at hadith. There are some hadith, like some ayats, that have ahkam, have rulings. This hadith has ahkam. So it needs to be studied like from a Jewish perspective. Imam al-Nawawi was a master of Islamic jurisprudence. So he knows all of these different elements when he's explaining the hadith. And it comes with stories, it comes with rulings, right? And it comes with terminologies. All of that to give you the meaning of this hadith. Now, to conclude, so this hadith read the hadith again and we'll conclude inshallah, so that you can get the full understanding. So there is no contradiction between the hadith and between the ayahs. La ikraha fi din, number one. No compulsion in religion. And there's no, and the hadith, the ayah of Surah Al-Kafirun, lakum dinukum waliyadin, to you your religion, to me mine. Right? There's no contradiction. So the hadith is related on the authority of Ibn Umar, that the Messenger of Allah said, I have been commanded to fight the people until they witness that there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the Messenger. Let's look at that for a minute, just for a minute, inshallah we'll conclude. This also tells us that when you're fighting a people, something that, like an engagement that's justified, that is verified, that's within the boundaries of Islam, that's within the guidance of Islam, that your intention is for Allah and His Messenger. That's the intention. You see? Ali bin Abi Talib, when he was spit in his face in a battle and he was winning, he stopped. And the enemy said, why do you stop? He said, because now that you spit on my face, I might fight you because of myself, because of what you did to me. But before, when I was beating you, I was doing it for Allah and His Messenger. Look at the level of ihsan and ikhlas and sincerity that they had. And then he says, and that they establish prayer and pay zakat. So this is for those that are Muslims within a Muslim land, that the practices of the Sharia are 100% implemented, that the scholars of Islamic law are also involved in the governance of that land, right? And that there is the system that is in light of the system that the Prophet ﷺ laid, and then based on all of those elements, there is a judgment placed on individuals that don't observe the salah or pay zakat, right? Then if they do that, if they do make tawbah, then they are safe from me with respect to their blood, meaning you can't fight them, their property, right? You can't take their property if they're not paying zakat, right? And except for the rights of Islam. Except for the rights of Islam. Now this, Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah, just to look at that statement, except for the rights of Islam, that means, again, if somebody, for example, rebels or refuses to give, he has excessive water, and he refuses to share with somebody in need, that's haram, even if it's yours. Because the water comes from Allah. Right? And sometimes it's a test if you're given excessive amount, to see if you share it with those that need. If somebody has the ability to pay a debt and refuses to pay the debt, then he's accountable as well. Right? It's a major sin. If somebody now, for example, within a community that is practicing, right, that the law is being implemented with the system, with the body of law, with the leadership involved, and in that environment, let's say it's a village, but that's the system, and in that environment there is an individual who rebels and doesn't want to make Jummah, right? Then there is some accountability as well, because it spreads corruption within the people. And maybe someone who has weak iman might be inclined to follow. And then he starts getting a following, right? So we prevent the greater harm to the community. Because once it weakens, then outside forces come as well and take over of that village. Right? And it's done. And it's done. So one who and criminals, etc. This is a haqq al-Islam. The haqq al-Islam is to get the rights of others. And the last part of the hadith says, related to the munafiq, right? وَحِسَابُهُمْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. If they say, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, and they're not fighting you, but they still have some sifat, you still don't, لا تحكم عليه, you still don't place a judgment on them. Why? Because they might make tawbah. And you might still have the same judgment from last year, because there was some nifaq last year. But maybe they made tawbah after that, and they made all their salah, and you're still judging them from old news. Right? So we say, حِسَابُهُمْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. Their accountability, their reckoning is with Allah. So this is the conclusion of hadith number 8. Tomorrow, next week's hadith is the hadith of whatever I give you, right? Whatever I forbid you, abstain from it, and whatever I give you, do as much as you are able. That's hadith number 9, inshallah. Barakallahu feekum, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.